Welcome everybody again. My name is Robert Bonilla. I'm an agent here for Comfort Insurance, and I'd like to welcome you all again to our weekly webinars. Today's topic and subject matter is going to be primarily focused on quoting personal vehicles. Now, in the world of P&C and even personal vehicles, there's many things that come into that. We got what we also call recreational vehicles. Some will even refer to them as our toys, right? When we're talking about motorcycles, RVs, boats, and there's many options for that. As far as carriers, there's many nuances that go into that as well. Similar to auto, which is why I want to focus today mostly on auto, because once you get a better understanding on the quoting process for auto, it makes it easier to quote the motorcycles, to quote the boats, quote the RVs. So we're going to look at today quoting personal vehicles the Comfort way and how we do things here at Comfort and using the tools that we have. At the end of the day, our goal is to satisfy our clients' needs, find what's best for our clients, find what's going to suit them and their situation the best. So I can tell you, as I mentioned briefly earlier, and as we saw, someone commented they've got 2 weeks quoting. I remember those times. And sometimes even now, it feels like I've only been quoting for 2 weeks. Reason for that is because you're going to come across different scenarios, different situations, different something that you may not have faced in the past. And that's okay. That's part of the process. Each quote, each experience, each client, each prospect is going to take you to another level. It's going to give you another notch under your belt that you're going to be able to say, okay, I know how to deal with this now. But nevertheless, it was tough. So I hope this training and this webinar gives you a little bit of value to your quoting moving forward. Okay. One of the things that I cannot stress enough, and I'll probably stress it again later on in multiple slides, is that initial contact with that client is critical to understand. Maybe not just the initial, maybe the first couple of contacts with that client, when you've already established that they're looking for to quote a vehicle. You're going to want to know as much as you can about the situation. Reason for that, not only is it for the underwriting purposes, and the questions that you're going to get asked, because there will be questions and there will be underwriting on your part. But it's more so to understand what the client is looking for, what it is that, are they looking for coverage? Are they looking to protect certain assets? Or are they looking for a way to lower their current premium because of today's economy? Who knows? I mean, everybody's needs are going to be different. Everybody's what they're looking for in your interaction and your guidance as their agent, as their comfort agent, hopefully, is to solve their problem, get them a solution to what they have at hand. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're there for. We're there to make them feel good about that decision, right? So just keep that in mind. That's going to be very important in all quoting that you do, whether it be with health, life, home, or auto. But today we're talking about auto. So the basics, and this can be whether you're going to be using the rater or whether you're going to go directly into a carrier's site. You're going to need some basic information. Okay. And it can come in different forms, but the ideal form is what I have listed here. You're going to want to try to get that declarations page from that customer, from that client, from that prospect, if it's available. What I mean by if it's available, they might not have current coverage. They might, it might be a new purchase. Maybe it lapsed. Regardless, you're going to need to find out that information. Don't assume anything. You're going to want to get that declarations page. And if it did lapse, try to get a recent declaration, the most recent declarations page, maybe what the last coverage that they did have. That's all going to be critical. If there was a lapse, the carrier's going to want to know about it. So just collect that information. And also it's going to serve as a proof of prior, because again, that will be a question that comes up. What was the prior coverage? And in some cases, you're going to have to present that document, that information. So obtaining the declarations page. Another thing that's important about the declarations page is the information that it contains. As an agent, it's going to give you very valuable information to be able to offer an effective quote to your client. What I mean by that is going to include VIN numbers. Yes, they can provide you a VIN number. They can provide you a picture of a VIN number. They can provide you a handwritten copy. They can try to read it to you over the phone. But based on personal experience, and again, there's been many painful experiences where you think you had the VIN number and it turns out that either something was written incorrectly, there was a glare in the picture and it didn't come out right. And you start getting into this whole quoting process and you realize you don't have the right information. So that deck page is already going to have a verified VIN number on it, and it's the most effective way to collect that information. Another thing that it's going to provide you with is what did that person have on that prior policy. It's going to show you the coverages that they had. It's going to show you drivers that were on the policy. Any extra coverages, did they have uninsured motorists? Did they have roadside assistance? Now, the importance of that, and I'm going to use a small little phrase here, and I'm going to tie it back in later on, is apples to apples. When you quote this person, you're going to want to compare apples to apples. What do I mean by that? If the person had a 10/20 coverage on a prior policy, and they were paying, let's say, $500 for that coverage, I have a slim chance of showing them a 25/50 or 100 300 that's double in price. That's gonna be a tough sell in some cases. In other cases, it might not be. But you want to be able to understand the coverages that they had and try to match that or improve on that for them. That's why apples to apples is going to be an important thing with that declarations page. And then finally is the licenses. You're going to want the licenses of anybody that's going to be on the policy. If they're excluded, you could probably get away with not needing the license. What I mean by excluded, sometimes you have a family member that lives in the house that is of age to be driving, but they don't drive for whatever reason, health reasons, physical reasons, personal reasons, whatever. But you will need anybody that's going to be on that policy listed as a driver. You're going to need their license. It's going to be asked for. You're going to need it. You're going to be able to get through certain stages without it, but there's going to come a point where you're going to need that license. So the sooner you can get it, the better. I usually ask for that right off the bat. I'm going to need deck page. I'm going to need license to be able to move forward. Little fun story or a little side note with licenses. And this did happen to me with a client, is anybody that has a license, especially in the state of Florida, that license information is being distributed, reported to the insurance companies. So if someone in a household obtains a license, let's say, there's a good chance that some of these carriers, a lot of these carriers will receive that information and take action. What do I mean by take action? They will usually contact, whether it be by mail, email, the policyholder and let them know, hey, we see that there is a person appearing to have your address that has appeared in your household. And at that point, there's sort of a call to action on their part saying, we're going to add them to your policy if we don't hear back from you. So it's important to kind of educate our clients on that, our prospects on that. When you're collecting licenses, it's not just give me your license. It should be more of a who are the drivers in this household, and try to get, again, going back to that initial collection of information, that interaction, understand the needs, understand their situation. Don't just jump to quote, because it's going to create double work and could create issues in the future with the carrier. So I highly advise getting to really know that client and getting to really understand their situation and giving them the right guidance and asking for the right information. It's just going to save you some extra headaches down the road. All right. And which leads us to the next pre-work that you're going to have to do before. Again, don't just jump into quoting, because it's gonna just create double work for you in the future. The carriers have their guidelines. We here at the office internally, our agents are using our pre-established guidelines. It's just basically understanding and knowing what your carriers require for any new business. Some of them have requirements on limits, prior coverage, any prior incidents, lapses. So this chart that I have here on the screen now, you'll see that there's certain carriers that you can get away with quoting just about anything. United, National General, Progressive, Allstate, to name a few. There's no real requirements. So those are kind of like your go-tos automatically. But if the person did have a higher coverage on their previous, with their previous carrier, it's going to open up your options, right? It's going to give you a couple other options, the Safecos, the Hartford, depending on what they had, it's going to potentially give you more options. If all they had was 1020, or they didn't have coverage before, you're very limited. And knowing that is going to save you some time in the long run. It's going to save you some of that extra work. The last thing you want is to jump into a portal and try quoting something for someone who didn't have coverage or had 1020, and you're in the portal where the requirement is 2550. And here you are, you're putting in your information, and you get to the end, or you get to a point where it tells you, oh no, sorry, this is not going to work. Again, it's going to save you some time. Just double check and or start to memorize these. After a while, you're going to know these off the top of your head, and you're not going to have to refer back to it. But another thing to keep an eye out, not just on those requirements, is kind of knowing your market, knowing what's open. For example, Mercury, a great carrier for us here in the state of Florida. It's been closed for quite a while. So staying up to date with that information from Santa Florida or from Progressive or from any of the carriers, really looking at those emails, really looking at that information, following up with the carriers. If you have a doubt, reach out to them and say, hey, are we still able to write business here? Again, it's just going to give you that extra knowledge an edge, really. Let's say a client tells you, "Oh, I really want Mercury." I know off the bat I want to be able to tell that customer, "Hey, look, I'm sorry, I can't offer you Mercury. They've been closed for about a year and a half now." And that's already giving you some extra value with that client. So I'm like, okay, this person knows what they're talking about, right? So just again, know and start to learn and try to memorize if possible and stay up to date with all this information. It's going to be important. It's going to help you in the long run. Now, once you've determined, okay, I see, I have the deck page, I have the licenses, I've seen what options I can go with. Now you're kind of starting, you're ready to start getting some information onto paper or into the system. Now, yes, I can go directly and quote in a portal with Progressive. I can go directly and quote with Kemper. Now, the issue that that's going to present to you is you're going to be there for a while because you're going to be putting in a lot of information over and over again. Just like when we talked about with the homes. We at Comfort Insurance are currently using PL Rating. Now, PL Rating is very similar to what we did with Quote Rush. Okay, it's a rater. It's going to give you multiple options by inputting the information one time. It's not the end all be all. It's not the ultimate solution to everything, but it's going to give you a great idea of where to go next. So after you've done that collection of data and kind of determined what carriers you want to work with or can work with, this is going to be your next step. Okay, so you log into PL Rating. And because PL Rating is very information sensitive, today's webinar is going to use a lot of screenshots versus actual examples. Again, it's very difficult to present this to you without actual data. But again, I'm going to go as detailed as possible with these screenshots so you understand what you're looking at if you haven't seen this already. So when you log into PL Rating, the screen that's on the left, the image on the left, is going to be the first thing you're going to see. It's going to give you a list of your recent clients that you can kind of scroll through if it was something recent. It's going to allow you to search for an existing client, or it's going to give you the option to create a new client. Okay, so for the sake of this presentation and to give you the most value and the most information possible, we're going to assume we're going to be talking about a new client today. So you would click on that blue button that says new, and it's going to take you to the following screen that's on the right, which is basically your client information screen. This is going to ask you basic information, your name, address, if there's any additional insured. At this point, you don't need to, if there's like a family of four, you don't need to add everybody here. You can, but there's going to be a page further on that's going to allow you to do that. This page, what I would recommend is focus on the named insured, the primary person on that policy. Okay, get their name, their date of birth, their address. There's going to be a question on here that's going to ask length of time at the address. Now, this is important because it's going to possibly generate a second step. So if the person has been living at that home or that address for less than 4 years, it's going to ask you for their previous address. Now, the purpose of PL Rating is, again, like with Quote Rush, is the more accurate your information, the more valuable the result is going to be. Okay. Yes, I can put 4 years, and I'm going to skip through on to the next page, and I'm going to be able to bypass that. But if in your conversation, if in your underwriting, in your field underwriting, and in your questioning, and you're getting to know your client, if you're able to determine that there was a previous address, maybe the license has another address on it, and they're giving you a different one for their home, or you see a different address on the deck page, this is a good talking point with your client. Maybe you can establish, yeah, we just recently moved. We've only been here for a year. The one on the deck page was my previous address. That's good information. Put it in here. Why? Because it's going to give you the most accurate information, which will lead you to a more accurate quote, versus putting this estimated information or this not 100% accurate information, and then at the end have it slightly skew your numbers once you get to one of your later steps. Again, the more accurate and more precise and more detailed you can be in this stage, it's going to help you out. So take a moment, and just, try to be accurate with your spelling. The reason you want to be accurate with your spelling, yes, you can edit things later, but you're creating a profile for someone who hopefully is going to renew with you in the future. And the better your data is in this stage, the better it is to preserve it and accurately be able to repeat. Okay. So once you got all that filled out, you're going to go on to the next screen, which is going to take you to a carrier selection. Okay. Now, this kind of looks like there's a lot going on here, but what your focus here is going to be the carriers that you already determined based on those guidelines that we looked at. Those carriers that you already determined that you are going to be moving forward with. Okay. So let's say we're talking with the example that we mentioned earlier of a 1020. We already know we can go with Allstate. We can go with Infinity. We can go with National General. We can go with Progressive. Obviously, Mercury would be an option, except we already know Mercury is closed. So we're not going to click on that option. And they're highlighted red for a reason. Okay. So here you're going to select those 5-6 carriers that you decided that are okay to move forward with. And this is going to be critical towards the end of the quoting process and the rating process. So make sure you click on those carriers here. Another thing to keep in mind is in your PL rating, just like we talked about briefly with Quote Rush, and again, this might be a separate webinar someday in the future. We'll see what we can do with this, but you want to make sure that your PL rating is accurate as far as logins and passwords. If a password got changed for a carrier website, you're going to want to update PL rating, because if not, it's not going to generate that quote for you, and you're going to lose that extra that power with that particular carrier with PL rating. So you want to make sure that's on there. So once you've selected those, that's already going. You've already gotten 2 steps out. You've got your customer information, client information, prospect information, and you've got your carriers that you're ready to move forward with. Okay. Now we jump into a little bit of the field underwriting, because at the end of the day, yeah, we're producers, but we're underwriters at the same time. These carriers, they rely on you. They rely on us to get the information needed as accurate as possible, so that they can provide you this quote in good faith. So, and if I'm going too fast for you guys, I do apologize. I'm trying to get this information into the time frame and respect everyone's time. If you have any questions that come up as we go, please don't hesitate. Put them in the chat, and we will get to them at the end of the webinar. So in the field underwriting, there's 2 things we're going to be looking at here. We're going to look at what their current situation looks like as far as coverage goes, and their vehicle. Okay. Again, this information, if they provided you the deck page, you've already got most, if not all, of the information already in front of you. Okay. You're going to fill out who was their previous carrier, when does that policy expire. If it already expired, again, you would put that there, the lapse date, last month, last year, whatever it was. That's the date that their most recent coverage ended or is ending, is what you're going to put there. And whatever coverages they had. Was it liability only? Did they have 1020? Did they have 100, 300? Whatever it is whatever information you have gathered, you're going to put that there. Okay. And it's going to ask you what is it that you're looking for? What is the coverage that you're looking for moving forward? And again, this could have been something that already was discussed. If an exact number wasn't, figured out, or they told you, I want to see what options I have, that's okay. You're going to put down here a limit, a coverage amount. It could be the 1020, it could be the 2550. Just know that that's what's going to generate on the quote. Your safest bet maybe would be go with the 1020, just for the sake of argument. But just know that information is what's going to reflect when your quote is generated at the end. But it's not, again, you're not tied down to that number by any means, okay? So you're going to put down the coverages based on, again, you want to compare apples to apples. It's probably the safest way to do it. If they had 1020, I would go with 1020 here. If I choose to present them a higher limit moving forward, or when I present the quote to them at the end, that's going to be up to me and what I feel that client is looking for or is best for them. But for the sake of quoting, if you have the deck page, I would suggest going with that amount. Again, on that deck page, you're going to see, did they have uninsured motorists? Did they have medical coverage, comprehensive collision coverages? You're going to see all of that. So you're going to want to try to, at least for the sake of that initial quote, you're going to want to use those coverages. If you want to add something that wasn't in their coverage, because you already know, okay, they didn't have bodily injury, but I'm going to make sure I include it, by all means. Obviously, this would be the time to do it. Or maybe they already told you, I didn't have uninsured. I'm interested in putting uninsured moving forward. This would be the moment where you can incorporate that into your quote. Again, this is just going to include it in the initial quote, okay? And then vehicle information. I can't stress enough, if you got the VIN, that's the best way to go about it. If you got the VIN because they wrote it to you, or they wrote it on their hand and they sent you a picture of their hand, might not work out for you. It may or may not. I don't know. It depends on how good that handwriting is and how good you are at deciphering people's handwritings. The best way to get the deck, the VIN number is off that deck page. So once you put it in, it's going to populate the vehicle. If the vehicle is not populating, you probably have an incorrect VIN number. I have yet to see a case with PL rating where an incorrect VIN number, a correct VIN number did not populate the vehicle. I have seen in specific carriers where a VIN number did not populate the vehicle or the motorcycle or whatnot. But if you got the right VIN number and PL rating, it should generate the vehicle information for you. And then it's going to ask you, what's this vehicle being used for? Is it personal use? Is it commute? Are they using it for a business? Are they using it for like Uber or Lyft? Those questions are going to come out here. Again, you want to be as accurate as possible because it will affect your results at the end. Coverages, comprehensive, collision. If it's a newer car, obviously you want that comprehensive or collision, or in many cases maybe required for the client or for the prospect. But sometimes it's an older vehicle and they don't necessarily want that coverage. Again, I would stick to the deck page. If they already had it, go with it. Just know that when you do finally get your numbers and your quotes and you're going to present, maybe as an agent, you can suggest other options for them. Maybe you should have comprehensive inclusion. Maybe you can get away with not having comprehensive inclusion. Again, these are things that as an agent, you're going to want to guide your client in the right direction with. Again, here you're going to see towing and labor, roadside assistance, rental. Again, these are all extra coverages that you may already know if they have had or didn't have, or you may want to already kind of include it. For the most part, I used to kind of leave those blank or base it off of the deck page. But I've, due to recent experiences, again, experience is important. It's key. I now include roadside assistance with every quote that I offer. Why? Because it's pennies per month for that coverage. And there's nothing worse than getting a call from a client saying, hey, I had to pay $150 for a tow truck last night. I thought I had that coverage. So that it's a very awkward conversation to have with somebody. And rather than try to make it a selling point, I just include it. And if they tell me I don't need it, then that's when I take it off. So the rental is going to be a little bit more expensive. If you want to try to use that same technique in your process, by all means, rental is a great coverage to have. I can tell you from personal experience as well, personal experience. There's nothing more frustrating than not having rental coverage when you need it. So if it's something that you can work into your sales pitch, your quote, that's something that you're going to need to kind of measure and understand your client and know where they're coming from, and see where it works out for them in their situation. But those are two coverages that if you could, I don't want to say sneak it into your quote, but include it in your coverages, include it in your quotes as a regular thing. It is a benefit to the client, especially that roadside is something that many people maybe assume that they have it. And if we don't do a good job explaining our coverages once they've already purchased it from us, maybe you know that you have a tendency to miss those kind of details or emphasize those kind of details. It might not be a bad idea to include that coverage for what it costs, so that you as an agent have that peace of mind that you're giving that person the best that you can. Right. So that's my recommendation is to, if you can, include it, and if you're not going to include it, make sure they know that it's not included when you sit down and you finalize that policy with them. Okay. So once you've got that information, you've already hit 3 different sections of the radar. You're almost there. You're in the home stretch. Okay. I can't really show on the screen what the next 2 or 3 slides look like because, again, these are going to be very personalized. But I can explain and tell you the next pages after the vehicle info are additional interest, which is whether or not they're financing or leasing the vehicle. If you have that information, it will be on the deck page if they presented it to their prior carrier. Or if it's a new purchase, they should be able to get that fairly easy. At the end of the day, you want to have that information because that lender, that finance company is going to want this information. It's going to need this information, and to avoid your client from having any communication errors with that lender, that finance company, you want to be able to get that put into the policy for them off, initially. So additional interest is going to be asked in the radar. Driver information. Okay. Any driver of legal age to drive should be on this policy. But again, there's cases where, somebody is not driving for whatever reason, those you can exclude them. And it'll give you an option to either rate or exclude when you're putting their information in by driver. This is where you would put the spouse. This is where you would put the mother that lives there that also drives. This is where you're going to want to put all of the driver's information. It's going to ask for license information, date of birth. It's going to ask for education. Now, education is a tricky one. It's asking that because there are carriers that will offer certain discounts for, let's say, a good student. Just keep in mind that those are extras that will require or may require additional underwriting or collection of information on your part once you get to the actual quotes or results. But again, the more accurate you are here, the more precise your quotes are going to be, or the closer. I can't say precise because I have yet to see one where that it gives me a quote or it gives me a number and I go to the carrier and at the end it gives me 100% what was originally listed on PL rating. I have yet to see that, but I have seen very close results and very good starting points or good ideas of where that quote is going to end up in the end. Okay, it's going to ask for incident info. Again, you can skip this and put 0 incidents, but just know that once you get to your carrier, before you finalize with any carrier, you're going to have to run your MVR, your motor vehicle report. Okay, this MVR is going to bring out all that information. LexisNexis is not going to lie. It's going to put out whether they had tickets, whether they had accidents. So in the tab, the section of incident info, if you know they had an accident in 2023, or they told you I had an accident in 2023, put it in there, because it's going to give you a closer estimate at the end when you do rate and when you do get the quotes from these carriers. Okay. Again, you could put 0 and move forward, but what's going to end up happening is, let's say Allstate is going to give you a number, let's say $1,000. And when you go into Allstate to try to finalize and try to close this deal, MVR gets run, and sure enough, an accident appears that we didn't include in the rating process, and now that $1,000 has turned into $2,000. Okay, so you want to make sure you are as accurate as possible, or at least go into it knowing that you're not being accurate and there's going to be a change. Okay, and I'll get to that in a second and why that's important. And then the last tab or the last section will be the carrier's questions. Every carrier has different questions. Some have a lot more than others, but PL rating sets it up in a way where you have all on one page, section by section, those extra questions. What are those extra questions? It can be, how long have you owned the vehicle? How long, has this person had a policy with this carrier in the past? Does their spouse have a policy with this carrier? So it's questions that you may or may not have the answer to. It's okay to call the client and maybe touch base. Hey, is this something that, how long did you have the vehicle? The more you do these, the more you're going to know the types of questions that are going to be asked. And you'll be able to kind of ask them ahead of time. Again, it's okay to be maybe not 100% accurate, but the more accurate you are, the more accurate your quote's going to be at the end. So once you answer those questions and you go through they're dragged down boxes, yes or no questions. Once you answer those, there's going to be a button that's going to say rate, and it's going to populate a screen like the one you see in front of you. Now, I recommend, once you get these quotes, these numbers that they generate, this is a random example of a case that I was working. You keep these numbers to yourself. Why? Because when you go into the actual carrier, these numbers can change drastically, or they can change very little. The less change you see, that means the better your information was in the quoting process. But if you knowingly skipped incident information, or think that there may have been an incident and you went ahead and put 0 just to go on to the next page, just know that these numbers are going to change when you run the MVR. There's going to be an accident or a ticket or something is going to drastically change these numbers. By drastically, I mean it can jump a couple hundred or even 1,000 after you run the MVR. So these numbers, as an agent, you should use it to say, okay, all right, Allstate gave me this, National General gave me that, Progressive, okay, which one of these do I think is going to be the best fit for my client? Knowing that this is pre-MVR and validation of any information that you put into the rater. Okay, so just what we do here at Comfort is we'll typically go from this page, we'll go into Kemper Infinity and kind of play it out from there, even though it might not be showing up as my best option right now. And the reason why we do that is I can get the MVR for free through Kemper. So once I get that MVR from Kemper, it's going to tell me no violations, successful MVR, and I'll have an idea already that, okay, we got a good MVR here. Or it's going to tell me there was a ticket here, there was an accident there, and I'm going to already know, okay, no, there is something on their MVR that I need to be concerned about. Why is that important? Because I want to try to limit the number of MVRs that I'm running, because I'm going to get charged for these MVRs in some of these carriers. So I'm going to use this page, this information, to see, okay, which carriers are giving me the best rates. If you notice, some are say 6 months, some say 12 months. It's telling me what the annualized premium, the premium for the year, is going to be. It's telling me if there's a down payment and what the initial payment or the installments are going to be, rather. It's also going to tell me if under premium, you'll see that the two of them there are saying see messages. For whatever reason, those quotes didn't generate on this case. And you would click on where it says, in blue, it says view under messages, and it'll tell you what that message is. It might just be that for whatever reason, the quote didn't generate, and the carrier wants you to go into their site and run the quote that way. It could be a number of things. All right. So the beautiful part about this is, again, if I have my passwords and my usernames up to date, there's a nice little feature here where you can go and click on the actual logo of the carriers there on the left side of that little screenshot, and it'll take you into the quote, okay, or the carrier and the quote. That way you can continue working on it. That is essentially the PL rating aspect of the quote. You've put in all this information one time, and it's giving you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options, 7 options. In some cases, it'll be less. Maybe, I can only quote with 3 or 4 because of their past experience. They're based on our guidelines, right? But now I know, okay, I have some viable options here. I would take the best of the viable options based on what I'm seeing and what I think is going to happen, right? Experience is going to be important here. Maybe I know that Allstate's numbers are pretty accurate based on this. And once I go to the Allstate page, I know I'm going to get something similar. But on the other hand, maybe I think the opposite, or I've experienced the opposite, that Allstate's giving me a rate here, and when I go there, it's going to be something different. I'm going to use this information for my sake. This is why I said it's a number. It's a tool that is for the agent. Okay, I got this. Now I can go on with this option or that option. Another thing this is good for, and again, this would be for probably another training in the future. You can use this information to show your client when you're in the selling phase or in the quoting or the presenting of your quote phase. Look, client, I didn't just get you this quote with Progressive or just this quote with Allstate. I got you this quote with Progressive or Allstate, but I checked with Foremost, I checked with National General, and this is what they gave me. And there's a way to generate this in the PDF form and present that to your client as well. It's one of the options slightly above this image. There's a PDF option that allows you to generate that. And again, that's just giving more value to their client. That client's going to look at it and say, wow, okay, I didn't just quote with Progressive and get this Progressive rate. My agent just quoted these 5 or 6 options, and this is what I have. Okay, you're shopping for them. Remember that we're not just Progressive, we're not just Allstate, we're not just Kemper. We are Comfort, and we are showing our value by shopping these various options for them. Okay. So once you got those rates generated, you're feeling pretty good, you go into the carrier. Just as with home, every carrier is different. Every carrier website portal is laid out differently. I cannot emphasize enough that familiarizing yourself with these portals is important. Okay. How do you familiarize yourself with these portals? Is putting cases in front of you and working the cases. Some portals, I mean, we've already answered a lot of questions here, but once you get into that portal, there may be some additional questions that weren't included on here, or they're kind of getting re-asked. But for the most part, the data will transfer over, the VIN, the license, the address. A lot of that stuff is already being transferred in for you. You might just have to answer simple questions like verifying previous coverage, verifying do they rent or own their home, which is an important question in the underwriting phase. And if you didn't get it in the underwriting phase, if you didn't ask them if they rent or own their home, one little trick that I like to do is I'll go into the Miami-Dade property search page, type in the address of the person, and see who's the owner on that property. If I see they own that property, I don't need to ask them. I already know they own the property. If I see another name or a corporation or something, there's a good chance they're probably renting. But again, those are all extra questions that are going to come up in the individual portals. Okay. What happens next? PL rating has generated some numbers for you based on the information you gave it. Now the rest is on you to kind of take that information and work it and find what's best for your client. Okay. As I mentioned, you click on the logo, it's going to take you straight to that quote. You're going to need to adjust. Maybe when you see the quote, you realize, okay, maybe 1020, I can adjust to the 2550, and that portal, that carrier's website is going to allow you to make those adjustments and recalculate and see those values in real time. Okay. Let's say you've gotten to that point. Progressive is giving you a real aggressive, good rate. You're feeling really good about it. Well, before you can, and I made this mistake early on. Again, don't give that number to the client yet, because you need to run that MVR. You need to run that vehicle records report. Otherwise, you're facing another potential disappointed customer. If you give them that rate and then you run the MVR after, that rate might change, and then you're gonna have to go and break that bad news to that client. So if you're feeling good about that rate, you think this is where you're gonna move forward with, it looks competitive, it looks like it's possibly better than what they had before, you run that MVR and you get that rate. Hopefully, by this point, if you did all your work accurately enough, you should not have too much of a variation in that MVR. I mean, in that newly generated quote carrier. Again, these carriers are different. We can do a whole training per carrier. That's kind of why I encourage you to just get in and work the cases. Okay. And again, Kemper, I think, is the way to go, because it's going to give you that free result on the MVR. After you've gotten that, you got your numbers. Now it's, again, a little bit on you as the salesman here, right? That's what we're here for. You got to prepare that quote. All right. You're going to offer some of the options within that best option. We said, okay, Progressive, we're going to go with Progressive. Now, what are the best options within Progressive? 1020, 2550, I don't know, uninsured, no uninsured. You don't want to just give them a Progressive offer and say, here, take it. Okay. You never know. You want to give them, maybe 3 to 4. So maybe the lowest value, a middle value, and I don't know, give them something premier, give them something. You never know. You never know if this person wants that elite coverage, that premier coverage, and is willing to pay a little bit more for it. You never know unless you present it, right? You can't just assume that they want the cheapest. They may have already told you I want the cheapest, but maybe after they see the cheapest and they see what a second or third option can do as far as coverage goes, and you explain what those coverages are, maybe they'll see the value and go with that. Okay. Explain. That's on you. That's on you to explain what that premium is covering, what coverage is included in that premium. Okay. Again, compare apples to apples. Going back to slide number 1, you have their deck page. You have what you're offering them now. Are you comparing apples to apples, or are you comparing, I don't know, a 1020 to a 100 300? If that's what it is, because that's what the route that they're going, you need to be able to explain that. You need to be able to say, okay, this is what you had, and this is what I'm offering you. This one is including this coverage that you didn't have before, and so on. Okay, you need to be able to make those comparisons and make them understand what the difference is in those coverages. Okay, and at the end, this is your time to shine as an agent, as a salesman, as a producer. This is where we tend to fail. You can have the best quote in the world, but if you fail to show the value in that quote, they're not going to buy. They're not going to see the value. They're not going to understand the value. So that selling point, that quote presentation point, which is a whole other webinar, if you ask me, that's where you really got to start to make the most impact. Okay. Final thoughts. I'm going to go back to the analogy that I used with the quote rush training, or the metaphor that I used. You can have the playbook, you can have the coaching, you can do the workouts, you can do the trainings, you can watch the videos, you can do practice, which I used to also do, by the way. You can practice quoting yourself. But at the end of the day, you need to get on the field and you need to play the game. Okay. You need to get the cases in front of you. You're not going to sell them all. Okay. You're not going to be able to beat every offer. Okay. But the point is to get the prospects, get the clients, work the quote, and try to give them the best that you can based on that information. Better offer might be somewhere else. Unfortunately, yes. Geico might have the better rate. State Farm might have the better rate. they might be able to bundle their home and auto somewhere else and get a better rate. But what you're trying to do is show them the benefit of having worked with you, the options that you can present them, and explain those benefits and coverages. Because I promise you, not every agent's doing that. Not every agent's explaining benefits and coverages, like how we do here at Comfort Insurance. Okay. So understand those differences in coverages, understand the importance of each, understand every carrier is different. Every carrier has different programs. You got DriveWise, you have Snapshot. I mean, know the carriers and what they offer, know their guidelines. Again, those are nuances that you're going to learn as you go. Feed PL rating. I mean, just like I said with Quote Rush, just PL rating is hungry. Feed it. The better your information, the better your result is going to be. It's going to make it easier for you. At the end of the day, you can quote direct with every single carrier. By all means, I quoted directly with carriers at times. But if I want to really get the best bang for my buck, and I want to try to get more options out to somebody, or consider more options for somebody, this is the way to go. And then again, every day's game day. Keep training, learn the playbook, and just be ready to execute. Those would be my final thoughts. Again, we're here as a team. We have departments that can help, whether you need to get contracted with a carrier, with Progressive, or whatever it is. Maybe you need some support with Santa, Florida. We have an agent support team that's ready to help you with that. With the different contact information is on the screen. Feel free to screenshot it or take a picture. You can call our office and they'll guide you to the appropriate department if needed. I know some of this information may have not been new information for some agents, but again, I feel that it was a good way to kind of start into more of the PNC side away from the home and flood that we've focused on the last couple of weeks. If you can quote an auto, you can definitely get into those recreational vehicles like we mentioned. Again, certain carriers, I think, would be the way to go on that. Specifically, that I know for a fact, Progressive is very good with that. Liberty Mutual, Safeco is also a good option for that. But again, get your feet wet with these autos, and just keep working them. You're not going to sell every one. It's okay. But we're here to support you with that. I hope that you can take some value from this today. Again, our team is here to support you. If you need anything, you can reach out directly to us. At this time, I'd like to open it up to any questions. Feel free to type them into the chat. And I'll just stick around for a couple minutes, see if any questions do come in. I appreciate your time. And again, just get out there and get quoted. One thing I want to also just add to that analogy of the, the just training and all of that. You can do all the training and prepare as much as you think you can. But just like in the real world, in the world of sports or whatever it is you're preparing for, there's going to be things that you just didn't prepare for or didn't know you needed to prepare for. Kind of like a trick play in a football game, or kind of like just something that got missed, and that's okay. Those are those experiences that you're going to be able to learn from and kind of just add it to your experience and say, okay, the next time now I know that's something else I should look out for. Again, the emphasis is just don't be scared. Just the first couple ones are going to seem daunting. They're going to seem scary. They're going to seem complicated. They're going to seem impossible. Again, I even get that in current cases. Sometimes I see rates and I'm like, did I do something wrong? Did I put something wrong? It just something doesn't seem right. It's okay. Just trust the process and keep growing.
How many carriers would you suggest we select on PL rating as the ideal number?
In PL rating, I would select every option that falls under the guidelines. What do I mean by that? If your client or your prospect currently has an insurance with, let's say, I don't know anybody, Geico, let's say, and their coverage is 100, 300, which is like the best coverage they can have, or one of the best coverages they can have. I would say, after looking at the guidelines, I'm going to look and say, okay, well, he definitely meets the criteria for this, and any and all of those companies that they meet the criteria for, I would include it into the rating, into PL rating. Why? Number one, it's going to give you more options with carriers, and the amount of extra work required for you is going to be very minimal. Why? Because you're putting in the data, and the only thing extra you're going to have to do by adding that second, third, fourth, fifth carrier that you added is going to be a couple extra questions. And I mean, a couple extra questions, I'm putting my finger like this, like you could, to give you an idea, it might be an extra 5 or 6, or it could be less questions on that carrier question section that you're going to have to do as far as extra work. So I would say there's no ideal number, but definitely if it's allowing you all 10 or 12 or 15 carriers, put them all, because it's not going to take away from anything. It's just going to give you more options at the end when they generate. Should we go by the prices and the premiums that we're getting in PL, or go more by the premiums given by the carriers? PL rating is going to give you a premium. It's going to give you an estimated premium. Do not use that as a final number by any means, ever. Go by what you get. After you get your options with PL rating, go into the actual carrier. That's where you're going to run your MBR, and that's the number that you need to go by. PL rating is just to give you an idea of where you're going to be, although it might give you the actual number or very close to it. I haven't seen it that precise yet, but again, the more accurate your information in PL rating, the closer it's going to be when you get to the actual carrier. Just keep grinding, keep working at it. It's okay to feel like it's hard. That's how you're learning. If it's coming out too easy for you, then you need to find something more challenging then. But it's going to be a challenge until you get more practice at it.